Woo! The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here for you for a little, of course, Wednesday Q&A for only you patrons on Patreon. You get to ask the questions, I answer them, and they run a gamut, and today will be no different. But before I get into the questions this week, I do want to say, first off, got some fair response for the past couple episodes that I released. I released a couple bonus episodes last night. I am recording this on April 12th, 2017, and got a couple, nice comments on those. Where I released an episode where I did a review of another DC Comics animated movie, the newest one, that being Teen Titans: The Judas Contract, based off of the legendary comic book storyline from 1984. That was a lot of fun to go over that. And then I did a little episode talking about my time in England. I recently went over there for about a week and talked a bit about that. So thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed that little bonus content. I try to get out as much content as I can for you. I was actually recently on Nick Hazelton's podcast. He has a kind of anarcho-yakitalism. It was fun. I got to talk about hedonism and some other stuff, and we might touch on that a little bit later on in this episode. We might. Depends on how many questions that I can get to here. But that was a good time. I'll be releasing that in the Patreon feed as well. And actually, just as a heads up, I will be tomorrow morning, if you're listening to this on Wednesday. If you're listening to this on April 12th, which will be release day. On April 13th, I'm actually going to be on Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock. Ernie has me on, every once in a while. And he just, I think he just loves talking with me. We have a good time. We're, in some ways, Ernie and I think are kindred spirits. I mean, there's things probably where he and I don't see eye to eye, but, isn't that true for everybody? Like for anybody to anybody else. Like, I'm a little scared when people, really don't think, at least in some ways, different from somebody else. As long as you're forwarding freedom, who gives a shit, though? So, anyway, yeah, so that's all coming up. Got other stuff coming up that I got a lot of show appearances that I have to be making here in the very near future. So all excited for those, and hopefully I plan on having some amazing content also getting released more for just the patrons, and maybe having some great guests on Sovereign Tech proper as well. But we'll see how that all shapes up. But what I really wanted to talk about initially is that really, really honored a Sovereign Tech listener. Now, I have an Amazon wish list, okay? And it's just, you go to wishlist.zog.ninja, okay? And on there, I put varying things. Like, there's things that we need. Like, we need for the studio, we need a new mixer. There's a bunch of different things that we're trying to get our hands on. To be able to do more with the varying shows, not just Sovereign Tech, but also Sex and Science Hour and whatever else. And sometimes on that list, usually it's just things we need. Sometimes I'll put on things there that, this is something that I kind of either want to review or whatever. And some people will often ask me, hey, can I get you a gift or something like that? And I'll, kind of facilitate it through that way. And I'm really honored by all that. And, I don't know exactly if this was for a birthday or what. Because my birthday's coming up. It's May 12th. Going to be 36. I know for a lot of people I'm still a youngin', but anyway. But someone did me the great honor of, or did not me, but just did the great honor of buying me a very expensive watch, quite frankly. Now, there is and pun intended here, there is a time-honored tradition of, comrades buying each other watches or buying watches at various points. I respect that tradition greatly. It is not a military tradition by any means. It is a tradition done between entrepreneurs, fishermen, men of the sail, women of the sail as well. Fuck, why not? Amongst pirates. I mean, this is one of those things, the concept of time and the exchange, not the exchange, but either the gifting or whatever, or the earning of a watch. I mean, it's really like, this is something that's been done in some form or fashion, even before there were watches. Like, I mean, you can go back to the tradition of handing, timepieces or what equate to timepieces all the way back to really the first kind of, maritime culture, the more popularly recorded one, I guess I should say more. Obviously, they're not the first maritime culture, going all the way back to ancient Egypt. So this is one of those things that, this is one of those traditions. This is one of those signs of respect that, I get it. And I'm really, really honored. And a Sovereign Tech listener who remain nameless, you're welcome to tell me who you are, but remained nameless, renamed mainless. Purchased me one, and it's a Casio G-Shock. It is a beautiful watch. I shared the picture of it on various social media. This thing is massive. It is a 50 millimeter watch. And understand, like your average Citizen or like Seiko watch usually is in the 40 to 42 millimeter range. This is 50 millimeters. This is a gigantic watch. And admittedly, when you're wearing a watch of, of this size, caliber would actually be the right word, would even be a good word to say, of this caliber. And I don't mean that because it's a Casio. It's a Casio G-Shock, which their G-Shock series is, that's their high end. That's, the watches that they make for divers and for, in all seriousness, if you want to go up into space. And in fact, this very watch could go into space and could dive pretty well too. But anyway, to wear a watch of this caliber, you definitely have to have the arm for it. You have to have the forearm, I guess, maybe more particularly for it, to where it doesn't look perhaps ridiculous, or just like drastically oversized and everything. And these are so large that they have the little fitting grips underneath. That's the quality of this timepiece. And I'm really honored. I like to think I have the wrist for it, that I have an arm of good size to where, it doesn't look positively ridiculous at all. But this is a very advanced watch. It's actually a model, I believe, that's from 2005. But because of the craftsmanship of these watches, and you'd think, well, Casio G-Shock, come on, what kind of craftsmanship are you talking about? Understand, some of their timepieces are as serious as a heart attack. This is one of them. And it has the multi-band 6 feature, which it's atomic timekeeping, which means that, pretty much almost anywhere in the world that I am, it can pick up the signal and can automatically change the time based upon, where it picks up that signal. And that signal gets sent. You can collect it manually, but generally your watch will look for it when you go to bed at night, when it considers whatever bedtime happens to be. So not a smartwatch. I don't wear smartwatches. I'm not opposed to wearing a smartwatch. In fact, if it ever gets to the point to where, and I've said this many times on Sovereign Tech Prime, anytime, once it gets to the point, and Android Wear 2.0 is kind of getting there, when it gets to the point where the watch can act completely independently of the phone and can be used as a phone, I'm there. Absolutely, I'm ready for the smartwatch at that point. But if it's just a companion piece, that's fucking pointless. But I love watches. Understand, it's not like it's not like I think that watches are meaningless. I just think that a watch that has so many shortcomings, like battery life, like this watch has what's called tough solar. It's a technology largely indestructible that, the whole watch is pretty much indestructible. But, it's totally powered by solar or even just by lamps. Just about any light source can power it, which is great. You don't get that with a smartwatch, right? And a smartwatch, you have to charge generally once a day and all this. It defeats a lot of the standard things you come to expect from a watch. Not that smartwatches or even something that gives a nice notification to you, wouldn't be handy or useful. Sure, I get that. But based upon the shortcomings that and a lot of them aren't waterproof. I know some are now, but yeah, a watch has to be able to live up to my lifestyle. It has to be able to handle my lifestyle. Okay, and that's why I'm not wearing, Citizens and Seikos and a lot of those, not even getting into a good Tag Heuer or something like that. I'm not knocking any of those watches at all. I'm an official, I'm a dilettante in the watch world, and I appreciate all of them. But it's got to be something that can handle, what is for me, honestly, a pretty active lifestyle, or it's active when it needs to be, and I don't want to have to change clothes or change watches or something. So this is just, I just want to say I'm honored. I'm really honored by this gift. It was important to me to, I know it was from a patron. That's about as much as I know. In fact, the note even said on it, it said, pretty much said that for when we go into space, because again, this is a watch that could go into space, it could handle that, the G-forces, what it takes to get up there. It just means the world to me. So thank you. It means the stars to me, actually. And so I just wanted to say thank you. It was received and message meaning the note that you left, I was honored by, because certainly one of my goals in life is to one day get into space. I want everybody to be able to get into space, not just me. And just, I appreciate the, again, the long-standing, very valid tradition of the gift of the watch, the gift of the timepiece. That has been around for a very long time and has been practiced by, by explorers, by entrepreneurs, by, all the grand things that when humans, forego violence and say fuck violence and all that and fuck war, that they engage in, and it's such a beautiful thing. So thank you so much. Anyway, we have questions to get into. we have some doozies. That I actually, I'm excited to kind of talk about a little bit, because I always love hearing when cool shit is being done. Okay, I guess the first one is I did get a question about Yubikeys, which I have mentioned in the past. We talked about passwords, like what's a great password to make and all of this. What are good ways to secure things down? What do you use for two-factor authentication? Should you use SMS? Should you even bother? Should you use an Authy? Should you use, what app should you use, etc.? All this different stuff. So someone asked me about, purchasing a YubiKey, and they had a concern that the new YubiKey, which I believe is the YubiKey 4, it's partly closed source because of a new FIDO scheme that it is compatible with. And without getting too much, in the weeds on that, it can do, the YubiKey 4 can do OpenPGP and FIDO response, which the actual, the previous versions of YubiKey can't do some of those. Now, part of the problem here is that, and that the question asker brought up, was that he had heard that the YubiKey 4 was not completely open source. This is true. Now, the YubiKey that I've recommended for some time is actually the YubiKey Neo, which the YubiKey Neo, and you can get that I think you can still get that in the Nano version, where the Nano version, it's like this really, really, it fills in a USB port, and it's that small. It's, very slick. Or you can get the larger size, and usually end up paying like a $10 premium on a YubiKey, to be able to do that. Now, if you don't know what a YubiKey is, it looks like a flash drive, okay? And again, there's two sizes like I just described. It looks like a flash drive, and it acts as a second factor, a two-factor, or it acts as an authentication device. Okay, which this is an idea that I am totally on board with, to where two-factor authentication isn't just some app that you're running that creates one-time pins, okay, but it's actually an entire separate device that you hold on to, or that you keep on you, or whatever, that does a handshake more or less with either a site or software or something on your computer or even on your smartphone. Now, speaking of it being able to do it on a smartphone, that's where the Neo comes in, the NEO. The YubiKey Neo has NFC built into it, and that's why I recommend that one, because you can use it with your smartphone. Now, how does it work with the smartphone? Well, let me explain. So first off, the YubiKey 4, if you have the concern about the closed source aspects of it, I mean, FIDO gets, anything that FIDO comes up, FIDO is this encryption, software alliance effectively. Anything that FIDO develops does get what adds up to being peer reviewed and independently reviewed. Okay, so you can feel a little more confident about it, kind of like how there's the popular encrypted communications app called Threema. That Threema is not open source, but it has been independently reviewed, by a reputable company. And so, do you want to trust that independent review? Yeah, I mean, it's better than it just being closed source and you never fucking knowing. Certainly there's an advantage to that. But the YubiKey Neo itself, so if you want to trust the YubiKey 4 to take advantage of some of the newer stuff it can do, I totally understand that. But the YubiKey Neo itself is completely open source. Okay, so that concern, isn't really there. And based upon what I think the average person wants to do, the YubiKey Neo is enough. Like, you don't need the YubiKey 4. You don't really necessarily need those new features. Though I've yet to test one. Maybe I should put one in the wish list so that I can test them, because these things run about $50. $40 to $50 or something. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I might do that, and then if maybe then I could test it out. But I love the YubiKey Neo. And how you go about using it, because a lot of people also asked this in the past, because I didn't really describe how it gets used. So there's a couple ways that it gets used. One is that if you have a and this might be like the killer app, okay, for YubiKey, is let's say you're using LastPass. We've already talked about the potential concerns of using LastPass. But let's say you're using LastPass, okay, because a lot of people do, and I understand why. Okay, let's say you're using LastPass. A great thing that you can do is, if you're using LastPass Premium particularly, which is like $12 a year, and it's worth it. If you like LastPass, it's totally worth paying for. What it'll allow for is it'll allow for you to set up to where the only way you can get into, and the only way you can get into your vault, on your password vault or note vault on LastPass, is by plugging in your YubiKey, okay, into a USB device, and then you have to press the little gold disc, which is a little capacitive button on them. You press that, and then it fills it in, and suddenly you can get into your vault. This is a very handy thing. Like, every time your computer restarts, okay, if you have the LastPass software installed, either as an extension on a web browser, or more openly, like if it's on a Windows device or Windows computer or something like that, it will ask you to plug in your YubiKey, and that's a great thing to have, because like, even if say you did whole disk encryption or something on your computer, you would log it, say somebody got past your whole disk encryption and they tried to access stuff, it would still be really handy that, they need your YubiKey or something like that to be able to get access to a lot of your passwords or whatever. But I mean, then one could get in the argument, well, but if they can get past your whole disk encryption, they're probably pretty good and could figure out some way of getting to your LastPass. Yeah, that's playing a whole bunch of hypotheticals. So I'm just saying that it's a great thing to do, in my opinion, is to have a password manager that is locked out, through a second factor hardware device. Like, I think that's phenomenal. It's a brilliant idea to do. So that's one of the best things that you can do, is to lock down, say, like a LastPass account, or if other password managers allow you to authenticate with a YubiKey, it's another great way to go. The other thing that YubiKey will allow you to do, now there's other companies, not just YubiKey, that actually offer FIDO two-factor authentication devices that are just like YubiKeys. YubiKey is kind of the most popular one, and obviously they hold a lot of say and sway when it comes to the FIDO Alliance. So if you go with YubiKey, YubiKey offers, I imagine the other companies do the same thing, but YubiKey offers a software and it's that, OTAP, one-time password stuff. Okay, it offers you to, they have their own software that does that, totally open source, that you can download. And here's what's interesting, is because these are kind of rare on desktop, is you can get the YubiKey, you can get this two-factor authentication. You know what I'm talking about, like Authy, or there's like a Google Authenticator. There's a bunch of these where it creates that one-time password that you have to put in, and it's time-based. You have like 30 seconds to put it in. It's a second-factor authenticator, right? So they actually offer one for desktop, which is kind of unique. Now the cool thing is, and I'll talk about how it works on mobile as well. The cool thing is that if you have the software open, if you have the YubiKey Authenticator software open, all right, and it's showing all of your, one-time passwords, it's doing the whole, tick and everything, right? Now, for that software to work, okay, you have to have your YubiKey plugged in. And that's the cool thing, is that if you just instantly, like pull out your YubiKey from the USB port that it's plugged into on your computer, all of those one-time passwords instantly disappear. And nobody can access that without having the YubiKey plugged in. So it's not like you have this attack vector, on your computer where, suddenly, oh, well, what's the point of having second factor authentication all in one basket? Like, isn't that a bad idea? Well, you don't really, because it's actually, it's actually all controlled by the YubiKey, by this physical little flash drive looking device that you can pull out and do it as needed and pull it away, and then it's not there. It's a really nice solution, and it's not cloud based whatsoever. It is so cool. So I love that. Like, I think that's really cool because then it makes it handy and it's right on your desktop, which is often where you need it, and you don't have to carry your smartphone with you. Now, as far as doing this on a smartphone, YubiKey also offers the YubiKey Authenticator software for your smartphone, and this is where the YubiKey Neo comes in. Because it uses NFC, it does the same trick that I just described, where for the app to show you your one-time passwords, it needs to detect, just through NFC, you don't have to plug it in hardware-wise to your phone, just through NFC, it detects your YubiKey Neo, and then it will show you all those one-time passwords. Very, very, very nice. Like, I mean, it's a great implementation of that, but it also has a password as well that does, the encrypting of the app itself, which is also true for the desktop app. So it's not like just anybody could read it like RFID or something and, could get your one-time passcodes, through NFC. It doesn't work that way. So, I mean, just really, really nice. Just tap it on the back of your phone and, you'll have to put in your password, or you can tell it that, you only need to put in the password once. And then, all that stuff will instantly show up. It's such an elegant little solution. I really do appreciate the concerns over like that the new YubiKeys are not entirely open source, and you may be worried about that. I do appreciate that. I don't think that there's anything inherently nefarious about that. Something that's very popular in Silicon Valley in general, in the tech world in general, is that you keep things closed sourced at first. That way you can get a market. That way the idea is that you get a market edge. I'm not saying that works every time or that that's somehow like inherently true, but you build up a market edge, you please investors with that sort of thing, and then later on down the line, once you become the name and once everybody's using it, then you open source it, right? I'm not saying I know that that's what YubiKey's doing. I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of the idea that they're doing, because it is taking off. I mean, more and more services are taking YubiKey, for one. And this is kind of pointless in this instance, but there's another where it isn't. Okay, so Windows 10, which, by the way, the creators update came out. I checked it out. I'll be talking about it on Sovereign Tech Prime this week. So in Windows 10, there is an app that you can download through the Windows Store called YubiKey for Windows Hello. Windows 10 has Windows Hello, which is this software package that allows for alternative ways of logging into a Windows 10 device. It could be with with facial recognition, which it's not the clusterfuck of Samsung's facial recognition, which I could talk about that forever because that's a fucking joke. In fact, that's dangerous, because you're putting facial recognition on Samsung devices. And this is in reference to the S8, which actually looks like a very nice phone. Okay, but this implementation's stupid. Like they put in facial recognition, very basic facial recognition, which got cracked, right on the showroom floor for the new Galaxy S8, because somebody just took a picture of their face and it worked, right? But they put it in with genuinely good versions of securing your device, like PIN. Well, that's probably the best one. Is just like a 6-digit PIN. That's the best thing. Or I mean, if you could do more digits, great. But at least a 6-digit PIN to lock down your device. But it put it right in the same thing with them. And so like now there's this popular idea that, oh, this is a great way to secure a device. Well, horseshit. It's a terrible way of doing it. It's instantly crackable. Some people talk about how if it worked to that, if it told you had to move your face a little bit, like smile, now do this, that it would be a better scheme. I don't agree with facial recognition whatsoever. Windows 10 or Windows Hello does not have that problem. It's not that insecure because it actually requires a very special camera that has depth perception. It was at the Intel RealSense. And so, it doesn't fall prey to that. But That's an interesting way of doing it with Windows Hello. Then there's, of course, there's other biometrics, fingerprint, all that. Securing a Windows 10 device, now you can actually use a YubiKey. But here's the problem with that, is that you can't force it to use the YubiKey. Like, for a YubiKey to really be practical, it needs to be the only thing that can be used to lock down a device, or to unlock a device, more specifically. So the problem is that, you can use, a YubiKey to unlock your device, and that's kind of cool. But then you could also just use a password, or you could use a PIN. And for me, it just kind of becomes pointless. And I don't think it offers more security, because again, it doesn't default to that. Or, you can have it default to that, but it doesn't require using the YubiKey. That's the magic ticket. It's got to require the YubiKey, and it doesn't. So it's kind of stupid. As far as I understand, with Chromebooks you can set up to require the YubiKey. You can have a backup system of some kind, but with like a backup code for Google devices that you can make when you set up two-factor authentication on a Google account. But with Chromebooks, as I understand it, you can set it up to absolutely require the YubiKey and to unlock it. Now that's good. That's a good move. Okay. It's a shame. If Google wasn't such a shit company, there's so much to like about what they're doing. Like with Chromebooks, I used to be a huge Chromebook fan because there's so much to like about it. Instantly encrypted. Like, once you close the fucking lid, it's encrypted. There's so much great shit that they do with those. And implementing the YubiKey, as an unlock device, as a authentication and to unlock the Chromebook. That's a great fucking idea. I really appreciate that they do that. So YubiKeys, there's great ways to use them. And I understand the concerns about YubiKey 4. I recommend the YubiKey Neo, just out of the gate. So, and then also, as far as I know what the instant concern is with YubiKeys is, hey, what happens if you lose your YubiKey? Well, you got a couple options there. One is that you could use two YubiKeys, and one of them maybe you could lock away in a safe. And that way, if you lose the one, you can just, pop out the other. Okay, and the software allows for the usage of all this. So it's certainly a possible thing to do. The other thing is that the nice thing about YubiKeys is that they are practically indestructible. Don't run them over with a truck or anything, but they are very, very, very tough devices, and they're waterproof, and all that. And I think that that's great. Personally, I'm not telling you anything new, because at some point you'll probably see a picture with me wearing it. So I'm not revealing some kind of grand secret. I wear mine around my neck. Like, I have, your regular dog tag kind of chains. And then I have a little loop at the bottom, stainless steel, little clasp that I can easily pull, without having to take the whole necklace off, that I can easily pull out, pull out the YubiKey from. That's something you can do, is just, wear it around your neck at all times. And I don't mind. I could shower with it if I wanted to. Again, the things are waterproof. I could do all kinds of stuff. So that's how I make sure that I don't lose it, is I'm always fucking wearing it. Which, that's something. So this idea of hardware devices that can act as two-factor authenticators is, it's not a new one. It's something like that Steve Gibson is doing with Squirrel, SQRL, which I'm really excited about. Can't wait for that to come out. But I did the episode a few years ago. I did episode 99 of Sovereign Tech, which ended up becoming the infamous and the much loved, really, thank you, Sovereign Tech 2099 episode, which was the first fictional episode of Sovereign Tech where I went into the future in the year 2099. And in that, there were devices that literally attached to your skin, that you could take off if you needed to, but that you'd wear that acted as these two-factor authenticators. So, me wearing my YubiKey is actually kind of step one or step zero to getting to that, to where we have devices that, that act as our authenticators for whatever information we want. I hope that explains. Like I said, one of the best use cases just right out of the gate. Well, first off, you can lock down your Google account with the YubiKey. That is really fucking handy, and Google handles it well. The second thing is that, and look, folks, a lot of people have to use Google accounts, so there you go, rock and roll with it. Okay, and the second best use case is for your password manager, is to lock it down with needing that hardware device. I just think that it's such a great security setup to do. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to another question here. And I like this. So this is coming from a great patron. Greetings, Doc Sauvage. I'm guessing like a reference to Doc Savage, which I'm actually a big Doc Savage fan, especially the comic books. I know they're still trying to make that movie. Is The Rock supposed to be in it now? I don't know. There's already been Doc Savage movies. That's not anything new. But anyway, Doc Savage. I like that. It almost sounded like Sauvage Opress. That works for me too. Anyway, has anyone mentioned that you look a bit like Anton LaVey with the facial hair? Actually, patron, you're not the first one to say that. And I'm honored because, if you're going to end up looking like anybody, in fact, we might talk about Satanism here later in this episode. If I'm going to end up looking like anybody, Anton LaVey is not a bad cat to end up looking like because I don't want to get into like a conversation about rational Satanism, at least not right now. But I take that as a compliment. How about that? Because yes, I've recently been growing out a goatee. If you see my profile picture on various social media, you can see what that goatee looks like. Though Anton LaVey was a little bit twiggy. I like to think that I'm not that. But yes, I get the point all the same. So. But that's not why I'm writing. That's the person said. So I'm currently working with a group on a plan to convert a 60,000 square foot abandoned building into a non-governmental, for-profit community center. I love the sound of all of that. It is in a town of 10,000 people with a very progressive and expensive private college, and we think there are enough resources sloshing around to make this a premier co-working space. Hackerspace, indoor community center for flea markets, roller skating. Woo, roller skating, baby. I am, and I'm dead serious. A lot of people don't know this. People who listen to Sovereign Tech for a while know about this by now, but I am actually a medal award-winning, or a medal winning, I guess you say. I am a medal winning roller skater, literally. Like I can roller skate, no boast. I can roller skate with the best of them. Absolutely, I will take you. I take my roller skating chops, and I'm talking about on quads, not necessarily on inline skates, on rollerblades. But on quads, I will take on anybody, anytime. I am 100% confident in doing it. So don't mind me being a little braggadocious, but I know how fucking good I am. Okay. So I think that's so cool. Maybe sometime, there aren't a whole lot of roller skating rinks in New Hampshire. Maybe sometime Stephanie can give video of me so you guys can actually see how it go, you can really see, hey, this guy's actually really good. So anyway, I got sidetracked. So roller skating, maybe even indoor soccer. Awesome. Anyway, we want to set up an in-house local currency, and I'm looking at blockchain platforms like Colu. Now that's COLU. For those that want to look into this. Honestly, I'm a little skeptical about the ability of a local cryptocurrency to actually deliver the goods. I would love to hear you do a segment on real-life social benefits of blockchain technology, but maybe that's too wonky. But do you have any thoughts about this? I look at how energy-heavy most of the tech is and how much development goes into it, and I wonder if we aren't just better off with an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. So Colu. Okay, this can be found at colu.com, COLU.com. And the idea here with Colu that I understand is that it's largely like it's a wallet software that is a front end that you can use, and you can plug in various things into the back end of it. Like credit cards. You can kind of create local currencies. Now, this is an idea, and I imagine this is why the person asked about it. This is an idea that I've been floating around for some time that some other people have talked about, but not many. Because most people are of the idea, and look, I love Bitcoin, but I've been saying for years and years and years now that what we really want to get to is like currencies that can address the needs of a community or of a bioregion or of a more localized area. One of the best examples of this, and why I know it's not my own idea, is Aurora Coin, which was very popular a few years ago, or like it was kind of because the idea of Aurora Coin was based off of Litecoin, It was kind of forked off of Litecoin, and it was specifically for Iceland. And there was what they called an airdrop, where they, digitally, whoever was ready to receive it could get a bunch of Aurora coin that lived in Iceland. And of course, obviously, other people tried to, get their hands on it too for that. But this idea of, and I thought Aurora coin was just a brilliant idea. Because honestly, like the reason that it was working for Iceland is Iceland was going through a banking crisis. And so to create a currency that was specifically for Icelanders, and saying, look, here's a solution, here's how we can get out of all this and everything, because, they had very specific needs at the time. And Litecoin had, especially at that time, this would have been 2013, something like that, since Litecoin at the time had some degree of advantages, over Bitcoin, some, speed, things like this, that it made a lot of sense that they went with that, and that they wanted to come out with a currency that could address what was going on there, and it also, I think the other thing with Aurora coin that was intriguing was that in fact, I think even Vice made like a 15-minute trailer about it. Or not trailer, I'm sorry, documentary, like one of their little short documentaries that are always kind of fun. I think they made one of those recently, but regardless, the cool thing with Aurora coin was that with it being a localized currency, it assuaged, I think, a lot of the concerns, maybe even conspiratorial concerns, that global banks were at fault for what happened in Ireland with the banking crisis that occurred there. And so when you made it a local currency, it wasn't like if they just went there, because the instant thing people would say, well, just accept Bitcoin. But then they're going to say, yeah, but Bitcoin is affected by, factors outside of Iceland. And so we don't want to trust that because that's what got us into the situation in the first place. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that line of thinking, but I understand the marketing around that. Like saying that, no, we're going to make a specific coin by Icelanders for Icelanders, and that can't really protect itself from outside interests, but that at the very least, outside interests certainly aren't at the heart of it, and shouldn't affect it too much. So it's a brilliant idea, to do with Aurora coin, in my opinion, and that sort of thing I think needs to become more popular across the board. That's just my opinion on it. Like I think there should be, in New Hampshire, you have the Free State Project, make the Free State coin. If anything, even to incentivize dealing with other businesses that accept it, which has been one of the, and that works, folks. That's been one of the major things that has forwarded Bitcoin, is because a lot of companies that start accepting Bitcoin end up doing pretty good money because, oh, you accept Bitcoin? Okay, we want to frequent you. That was the thing for a while. And I think on a local level, that could get a lot more interesting. And could really bring a lot of stuff to fore. So, but to answer this question, about, let's see, I would love to hear you do a segment on real life social benefits of blockchain technology, but maybe that's too wonky. But do I have thoughts about this? Yeah. So I do have thoughts about this. Now, the energy heavy concerns are totally understandable. Like I really get that. This comes down to what does it take to power the miners, right? For all these different things. There's concerns around that. I get it, and there's others, so proof of work, which some people consider to be the, pun intended, gold standard of, how how a cryptocurrency secures itself and, comes into being and all of this, right? I get that. I understand those arguments, and in a lot of ways I agree with them. But that doesn't mean proof of work has to be the only thing. Proof of stake, people have concerns about proof of stake. And I get those. Like I really do understand, a lot of that. Where proof of stake would be not so energy hardy or energy heavy as compared to proof of work. And of course, proof of stake coins, I mean, they have been legion. There was NXT, which I was really excited about for a time. There are Black Coin, there's a bunch of different ones that use proof of stake. Dash, I think, is still proof of stake. Whatever. I mean, there's a lot to, there's a lot to choose from as far as that goes. There can be other algorithms or, other proofing algorithms, whatever, that could be invented, created, that could solve a lot of that. But that's not going to help this community center right now. Like it'd be crazy to try and develop that. who I would actually, I mean, just to kind of like address this specifically of what would I do if I was dealing with this, I would talk to, there's a great organization, the Peer-to-Peer Foundation. I think it's p2pfoundation.org. I would talk to them. They created, what was it? Was it Faircoin or something like that? I mean, and yeah, I know people are going to have issue with that name, but get over it. I think it was called Faircoin. Like, they've really been trying to do this, and I think they would love to like get involved and have their developers, jump on board with, trying to create some kind of like hyper local currency for a community center. I mean, that would be right up their alley. And I think that could end up being, very interesting. So, real life application of blockchain technologies. I mean, in a lot of ways, for a community to actually be self-sustaining, I think it's the only way to go. I mean, depending on size, if we're talking about a town of 10,000 people, like, yeah, there's certainly one centralized server that could do a lot of this stuff a lot better. I think, it's kind of funny, but, well, people are going to take some umbrage probably with some of what I'm going to say here. But, I don't think a lot of the, like, blockchain technology, like, I think it's kind of tailor-made, not to work on a global level, but to work on a very local level. Like servers, the reason servers are still the order of the day is because, on a global level, they work really well because they all communicate with each other really well. And you're not building up, these 100 gig or, you're not building up like crazy amounts of storage that everybody has to have on their computer to really, secure something, which is, what has happened with Bitcoin. Again, I'm not knocking Bitcoin, folks, and I'm not saying that blockchains can't work on a global scale. I'm just saying I think that they work far more efficiently on a local scale because everybody can really take part in it. And because it's local, you don't end up with, like with Bitcoin, where it ends up being into the hundreds of gigs or, eventually the terabytes and the petabytes and whatever, because it's just a currency, for localization, for this, maybe this community or the city or something like this. So it addresses a lot of the problems with blockchain technology when it's very local. And also, because of that, you can actually solve a lot of the energy problems because if you make it a more lightweight currency, and if you make it something that maybe is really just meant to be currency, it can be very lightweight. And it doesn't have to be so energy heavy like Bitcoin ended up becoming. Bitcoin became, energy heavy, not inherently. I mean, it kind of is. And I love in some of the writings of Satoshi Nakamoto where Satoshi's saying, oh yeah, well, I mean, your miners, your mining PCs, they can heat your house. This is great. So the person, Satoshi seemed to be dead serious about that. And I can really appreciate that, that kind of thinking. But yeah, it doesn't have to be, it really doesn't have to be energy heavy like Bitcoin. Again, the whole mining process and the whole idea that, you're really going to like speculatively make money out of all the mining that you're doing and all that. That's, and having a global community, that's what made Bitcoin so energy heavy. And look, I already know, like if you're talking about, we're talking about community based here. Okay. If this person was, if this, and I know this guy, he's a lot smarter than to suggest this. But I'm just saying a lot of people say it's like, well, Bitcoin is bad for the environment and all that, when it's like, okay, all those printers printing all that fucking fiat money, no, that's bad for the fucking environment. Bitcoin doesn't compare in that regard. But that's not the question that's being asked here, of course. So this is more on the localized level. Does it make sense? Would it work out? I think there are other coins. I think there are other things that actually make a lot of sense. And I would talk to the Peer-to-Peer Foundation because they are all about that kind of more, community-oriented aspects of using a cryptocurrency. I could see, and this dovetails nicely off of some of what I think we talked about last week when I brought up colored coin. Like, even if you want a cryptocurrency to do a little bit more the bulk of the things you want to do can be done in the wallet. Like, and Colu knows this, that the one that we just mentioned, COLU, because that's largely a wallet software, as I understand it. You can make a lot of the more interesting things with blockchain technology. You could put that into the wallet software, more often. And the nice thing with blockchain technology also is that when you add stuff on, like you could do colored coins to where, it could represent, like it could become a symbol of, like it could, a little coin of community coin, I'll call it that, like 1.00001 community coin, that little piece of coin could digitally represent a bill of sale. That's a great thing. Okay, that's a good thing. But you don't have, all you have to do is you don't have to make any changes to the code or to the coin itself. You just, in the wallet, you make the wallet be able to represent what that 0.00001 community coin is, and that it's not currency anymore. Instead, now it's shifted to being a representation that maybe you own something now, or, for whatever that means to you. So that, that's a very light implementation that I would recommend doing that. The other thing is that, like NXT showed and some others had showed, you can within a transaction, within like this blockchain, going around, you could do encrypted messaging. Now the thing is that I think, and this is probably something else you do on the wallet side, you would want that messaging, which that's a great real life application. If everybody's already transacting with all this, well, you might as well, talk with what's already being transacted, throughout the day, right? So blockchains are a great solution for communication as well. And now, I mean, and you can set it up to where it doesn't actually cost anything. You think of something like the classic bit message, which was very popular for a time. I was a big fan of it for a while. And not that there's really anything wrong with it. It's in some ways just a matter of adoption. I mean, like a new team took over for it, and there's other people that had tried to bake it in with I2P and all this. You can use blockchain technology separate from a currency and use it as a communication tool. And, and would work great, and especially in a group of, say, 10,000 people. Consider it, it's just, effectively bit message would just be your area code, right? And you would talk within that, and you could set things up to where, like, you could even send out like whole community billboards. Bit message could have, was already capable of doing that. But it's something that everybody's on board with, and everybody is taking part in keeping giant server farms from being built in the middle of town to handle this. Now, yeah, everybody's going to have to have a pretty good sized hard drive, to be able to take advantage of that. But hard drives are admittedly cheap. And there's great tools to take care of those cheap hard drives. Think like SpinRite and some of these other things. Okay, so yeah, I can see on a community level, blockchain technology is kind of just the way to go. I mean, unless you're going to evolve beyond blockchains and kind of do something like MadeSafe, but we're still waiting on that. As sad as it is, we're still kind of waiting on whether or not that whole idea to where you have a set, instead of taking on everything, kind of like the old fashioned Usenet of, Usenet of store and forward, where everybody has a complete copy of everything. Instead of that, you end up with, where you tell like software that you install on a phone or on your computer, you say how much resources, right down to how many CPU cores, how much hard drive space, how much RAM that you want to dedicate to a community network. Okay, because this is going beyond blockchains here. Okay, we're talking about a network, but even it's still serverless though. But how much you want to dedicate to this community network, and then the network itself will take advantage of what you're offering. And then to some people, on the network, have a little bit more, or offer a little bit more. It takes advantage of more of it. But at the same time, you still get access to everything that's within that network, right? That's MadeSafe. So that would be pretty wild, but that's not really blockchain technology. That's kind of next level shit. If and when it actually really hits the mainstream, or, when it finally works without taking advantage of, some other technologies outside of it. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I think really like the idea, or not just blockchains, but really just store and forward, like Usenet, okay, where everybody kind of has a complete copy of what's going on. That's really the wave of the future for communities anyway. And you can encrypt that, and you can have, it could all use, like you can have different community keys, private keys that take advantage of that. And that's where blockchains come in, because you get to use, asymmetric cryptography, to secure what's going on, in a community. That, yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly if I'm answering this the best. But I think there are solutions out there. I think blockchain technology is a solution, especially on a community level, more so than even on a global level. Like community blockchains excite me way more than global blockchains by a long shot. And you say, well, what if I, have all my money in community coin, but I want to get some Bitcoin? Well, that's what fucking exchanges are for. I mean, the answer is obvious. If you're going somewhere else and you want to exchange it for a different one, I mean, this is something that money's been doing for 1,000 years. That doesn't mean that it's best to just have one currency like Bitcoin. No, you want tons of them. And in fact, I've said this many a time. When we had freer markets, as in government was a little less involved, all right, when you had freer markets, you had thousands of currencies. You didn't have less. It's only when governments start to centralize their power that you actually run into, where there's only one currency. So you want a bunch of these currencies. You really do. In fact, I love, it was hilarious, that April Fool's, which ended up not being a joke, the release of the season 3 premiere for Rick and Morty, which who knows when we're going to get the rest of the season. But Rick and Morty, I'm a huge fan. But, in that, spoiler alert, folks, Rick, he at the end of it, like he topples the this United Federation, effectively, by just like changing the value of their currency. And they only had one currency, and he changed the value of it, and the entire federation fell. See what I mean? You don't want that. You don't want that central point of failure with just one currency, that can control all that. And you could say, well, Bitcoin wouldn't do that because there's miners, and so the miners would have to accept, what Rick Sanchez did. And yeah, but come on, honestly, it is, I get your point on that, but you're still running into so many errors as to where, look, if you just had a bunch of different currencies, you would prevent, that kind of catastrophic failure from occurring. So I think that's a very attractive proposition. I hope I kind of described that. And like I said, the ultimate solution is that if you want, if I were you, I would talk to the Peer-to-Peer Foundation and see kind of what they have in mind for that, because they've been working on these kind of projects for a while, and I think they would just love the press. I don't think they'd want any money. I think they would just love the PR of being involved with it and maybe even attaching their name or something. So okay, boy, I was going to talk about Mastodon, but we are not the band either, even though they just had a new album come out and it was fantastic. Mastodon.social. I guess I'll have to save that for Sovereign Tech Prime this week, because we're just about in for an hour, and there's a couple other things I wanted to get into here. So, okay, album of the week. Here we go. We've been doing this on every Q&A, and people love it. I got a great response from my Deep Purple suggestion last week, and I appreciate that. This is something that actually has to do with this morning. So I think originally I was going to recommend Danger Danger, but this album of the week, this morning I was doing a workout, and I just really needed something I had a bit of a headache, and I needed something to really get me pumped and get me going. And so it's like, you know what? I'm going to put on Rammstein. And so I put on Rammstein. and I know a couple people, I mentioned that I was playing it on social media, and a few people said, it's like, oh yeah, Rammstein, man, forgot about that, So I was like, all right, well, let's do a pick on that. And so Rammstein, huge fan. This is a band that's been around since early 90s. They kind of made it big with their song Du hast, which means you hate, du hast mich, you hate me. That is probably not their best song. It's a great song, certainly. I mean, there's a reason it was such an international hit. And most people had no clue what's being said, in that song. I mean, it started talking about the angel of death and everything. Most people don't understand German, so they don't know. But, it kind of speaks to, Rammstein's amazing because it speaks to the power of the fact that, music really can transcend language. Sigur Rós is a similar, example to where, now the music's just so great we don't care if we don't understand exactly what the person's saying, because we kind of get it. I'm a huge Sigur Rós fan as well, but Rammstein. So their first, boy, they've had so many albums now. What was their first? The first album, Herzleid, amazing album, followed by Sinchuk, and then of course probably their biggest album internationally all the way around was Mutter. And Mutter means mother. So my album pick, I guess, is going to be Mutter, and that is the album that I was listening to the most. There's other albums, Reise Reise, Rosenroh, Ich tu de Ville is another. That was like their latter album. That was really good, and the title track, Ich tu de Ville, is oh fuck, man. That's some rockin' shit. So Rise is pretty good. That one's known for, of course, they have the song America on there, which they make it very clear in it when they start speaking in English, saying this is not a love song about America. And they had the song Pussy. I love that song too. It's hilarious. You have a pussy, I have a dick. So what's the problem? Let's do it quick. Even when Till Lindemann, the lead singer, even when he sings in English, it's hilarious. But anyway, my main pick would probably, the first three albums are definitely their best. Herzleid, Sehnsucht, and Mutter. And Mutter is, wow, just what it opens up with Mein Herz brennt is so epic. It's kind of slow going, but then it gets into the dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun. It was being used on trailers for movies for a long time because it's such a powerful song. It just has kind of that great riff going for it. And Rammstein, they're so heavy, but they mix in a lot of the electronica, and I think that just makes for a really, really unique, cool, that industrial sound. Of course, they're industrial metal, that's a whole genre. But then, but Mutter in particular was so good because he had Mein Herz brennt. Then it goes into Links 2, 3, 4, which has kind of a great, honestly, marching beat. Then you have Son, Ich will, Feuer frei, which Feuer frei was very popular because it was kind of the opening track in many ways for the movie Triple X with Vin Diesel back in 2001. Then, of course, the title track, Mutter, is great. Ryan Raus is great. It's such a good album, almost track for track. Some of the latter tracks are a little weaker, but the first 6 tracks just kick your ass. They're so good. They're so heavy, and there's such a great display of emotions, especially with Mutter, the title track. That's really good. There's other awesome songs. Of course, Sehnsucht is really good because it has Engel and the title track Sehnsucht. And there's the bonus tracks. What was they did a cover on that from Depeche Mode. Oh, Stripped. The cover for Stripped is so good. And of course, Sehnsucht has Du Hast on it and all of that. Herzleid, very, very underrated album. In fact, most Americans, I think they never even, they heard of Sehnsucht, but they had never heard of Herzleid, their first album. And the first album had quite a bit of controversy around it with Rammstein because the German version of the album, the album cover had the entire band who were, they're pretty ripped guys with, hair kind of slicked back and everything. And they're all looking very muscular. They have their shirts off and whatever. And they're standing kind of in front of a flower, which is kind of weird. But anyway, a lot of people thought that they were like neo-Nazis. Not true whatsoever. Not even close. In fact, do you want to know a neo-Nazi band? Do you want to know an actual Nazi band that you probably never saw coming? Ace of Base. Yeah, I saw the signs. They're Nazis. Or they're white nationalists. Look up the lyrics. There's a whole story about it. It's crazy. So anyway, people looking in the wrong direction. Rammstein is not a bunch of Nazis. And their first album, Herzleid, might not have gotten around so much. They changed the album cover at one point, and in fact, some of the more popular songs off of it ended up getting either remixes and would appear on tour editions of albums. For example, the best song off of Herzleid is Du riechst so gut, which means you smell so good. But it's an awesome song. You can almost dance to it. It's so good. Weird ass music video though. Don't watch the music video. What was they released the DVD a few years ago Lichtspielhaus, I think was the name of it. And if I'm pronouncing any of this shit bad, don't mind me. But anyway, that DVD was, they had all the music videos on it and everything. And like the music video for Derish the Good, the original music video. Again, there was a 98 version which had a really awesome werewolf kind of music video. But the original one, fantastic. It's so good. But just weird. Like there's this dog running across. It's very odd. But that is a fun, a really fun song. And then of course that also has the, I guess, band track, not title track, but the song Rammstein itself, which the song Rammstein and was it Du Hast? So there was the movie, there's the classic David Lynch film, Lost Highway, which the movie makes no fucking sense. And it's not supposed to, it's a style film. With, was it Bill Pullman was in that, right? That was really the first, I think, exposure, for Americans to Rammstein, because there's like 2 tracks. I want to say it was Du Hast and Rammstein, or maybe it was something else. Maybe it wasn't Simon. Well, whatever. Anyway, there's a couple songs on that. Then the song Du Hast itself ended up appearing on the Matrix soundtrack, and that, of course, that took it over the top. But yeah, really, Lost Highway was kind of the first exposure. It was the first time I had ever heard of it. And I remember my buddies and I listening to it and going, wow, that's fucking amazing. Like, what is this? And then you hear the whole album of Herzleid. I mean, Asher zu Asher, Heirata Mech. I mean, just amazing songs on that album. Is absolutely track for track. Senchuk really is too. Maybe there's a couple weak songs here and there. But like Derish so Gut, that got re-released on a tour edition of Senchuk, where they made it like the 98 mix or whatever, and it's still pretty much the same song, and just I love it. It's so good. So Rammstein, lot to love, lot to listen to there. Lots of albums, to go down, because now there's 6-7 albums in. There's some of it was a Volkerball. A couple of the albums are a little weak. Extrudeville is good. Rise is good. Rosenroll is like the title track was pretty good, but it was more of a smooth sound. It wasn't really that heavy industrial. But definitely the first 3, Mutter, Senchuk, and Herzleid, of course, are those really top the charts. So okay, we did our album of the week. Oh boy, am I going to do? I have some options here. I don't want to spend long on this. So I was actually going to talk about Satanism. I don't really think I have the time to do it. I don't want this to be like an hour and a half. I really don't. So I'm going to skip on the Satanism. We're going to have to save it for another time. But I mean, the question was basically like, they were asking me why on social media I use #Hail Satan a lot and all this stuff, and am I a Satanist? I'm going to answer that real quick, but then I'm going to go into greater depth in another Q&A, or maybe I'll just make a Satanist special. Look, I'm an atheist first and foremost, okay, and there is like the Church of Satan and the Temple of Satan, all these different things. Like they're really atheist groups. They just they have what is effectively hedonism, which is also known as rational Satanism. So no, I don't actually worship Satan. I do a lot of Satanist stuff for fun, for kicks, because it represents, for me, things I want to do, a lot of sexuality and things like that. But there you go. I will go into a deeper dive in the future on Satanism. But that's why I run with the whole Hail Satan thing. It's not like the shock. I'm not like a shock jock necessarily, but it's just a thing. So, okay. So what I want to do, though, is a Star Wars update. I had teased that I would be doing this soon, and I'm doing the Star Wars update because the new Thrawn book just came out yesterday. Of course, this is getting recorded on April 12th. The Thrawn book came out on April 11th. I am already done listening to it. Okay, it is a 16, and I listened to it because the audiobook is so good, and I definitely recommend this one as an audiobook because is it Mark? Not Mark Anthony. Not that guy. but the guy that did the, I think it's Mark Davidson. The guy that did the narration was fantastic. Like, he's not really good at female voices, but like his mastery of a lot of different male voices is incredible. And his voice work of Thrawn sounds almost as good as Mikkelsen's. Was it Lars Mikkelsen? It's Mads. Oh fuck, I forget their names. Mads Mikkelsen or whatever. It's his brother. Mads, of course, was played in Rogue One. Played the dad there. Played Galen Erso. But anyway, so the guy doing the voice for Thrawn sounds like Thrawn in Rebels, which is so cool. And that is so. I'm going to try and not give you any spoilers, but just an overall feel of the book. First off, it's, in my opinion, it is toppled Dark Disciple and Lost Stars as being the best Star Wars book ever written. And in fact, bar none, this is just straight up. This is the best Star Wars book ever written. Before Disney rebooted the canon in 2013, you might have had different books that you thought were the best ones. Whatever that. Maybe you thought The Heir to the Empire, which are the original Thrawn books. Maybe you thought those were, the best books, and I would totally respect that opinion. As to where, this one, and of course, fortunately, it was written by Timothy Zahn as well, who wrote the Heir to the Empire trilogy, which created Thrawn, not Thrawn. This even blows those out of the water. And it is an origin story, and it does kind of lead up very nicely to season 3 of Rebels, when Thrawn first entered the new canon. And you get a lot of characters are in there. Governor Price is in there before she was governor. So it's an origin story for a lot of things that are happening in Rebels. And now, and I can't believe a book made me want to do this. This book makes me want to rewatch Rebels entirely, because, and this is why it's the best book ever for Star Wars, is that almost sentence for sentence, especially in the first 5 chapters or so, sentence for sentence, you're getting some new kind of data. In fact, you could go to Wikipedia and you'd see on Wikipedia, which is the Wikipedia for Star Wars, on Wikipedia, they were updating, these guys had to be working overtime, these keepers of the holocron, as it were, because, they had to keep putting in new entries because there's so much new information, just about the entire universe that, the Star Wars universe that was baked into this book. It's so good for that. When the Emperor comes up and the Emperor's talking to Thrawn and all that, which that was actually, that little scene from the book was released a couple months ago to get everybody, to whet their appetites. And it's so good, especially in audio form. It's amazing. So this book, I really want to rewatch Rebels after reading this book. It is a tremendous prequel to that entire series. And so good. And the origin story, figuring out about Thrawn and everything. This is a great book just on its own feet, not just even as Star Wars. And I think what's great about it is that, so first off, I was reminded, I thought I was reading a Sherlock Holmes book. Now, longtime listeners of Sovereign Tech know that I have recommended that every human being on planet Earth read the original Sherlock Holmes canon from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, because they are the ultimate introduction to logic. It is the greatest education you can get. I've talked about this before. I remember I was in 3rd grade, just starting into 3rd grade, and they would have those Scholastic book sales, right? And I saw the book, and I could afford it. I saw the book for, there was the complete Sherlock Holmes, and I was like, oh, Sherlock Holmes, this is cool. And I knew about Sherlock Holmes because, of course, Batman always spoke highly of Sherlock Holmes. And so I bought the book and I read it, and my mind, even at that, even in 3rd grade, was so opened. I think the Sherlock Holmes book, get a kid able to read. Get them to to have reading comprehension, and then give them the Sherlock Holmes books. And in my opinion, the rest takes care of itself. Because those books are just so good. So I felt like I was reading a really good new Sherlock Holmes book, because the Thrawn book does this unique thing where it's a 3rd person perspective. I talked about this a little bit in the Teen Titans review episode that I had just done, but it's the 3rd person, but when it's Thrawn there's points where you're in Thrawn's head, which only novels can really allow for you to do. Okay, novels allow for the deepest depths of exploration, more so than any radio play, audiobook, or, well, audiobooks can do it, but, movie or game or whatever, more than any other kind of medium. Novels really allow you to deep dive into a person's consciousness. And you get that with Thrawn. And he's, the way he's thinking and observing and thinking things through and all this stuff, it is such a brilliant read. Like, I really wish more books were written like that. I kind of wish Dune, like the original Dune novel kind of touched on this, where you got into the thoughts of Muad'Dib, but it wasn't Muad'Dib explaining what's happening and then, getting his reaction to it. That's what's so unique about this writing. Like, Timothy Zahn, and I mean, I'm sure there's got to be other books out there that are written like this, but if they're not, if there's not, Timothy Zahn created almost an entirely new literary genre, or not genre, but style. He created an entirely new literary style. It is awesome. It is such a fun book. It is such an exciting book, informative book, intelligent book. It's a great book. Star Wars or not, it's just a great fucking book. And man, I mean, I am just so glad that my kind of my personal fandom for Thrawn paid off. It really paid off. The one thing, and this isn't anything new, you got this hint from the excerpt that was released, so this isn't a spoiler alert or anything. But you really get the sense, or you get the fact, that Thrawn, and in fact, because the Emperor kind of gets in his face about this, Thrawn is not, he's working for the Empire, but that's just it. He's working for the Empire. He's kind of like an independent contractor. And the only thing he really cares about is his people, even though he's kind of exiled from them. And I love that he's just this guy. He's like, no, he says I'm doing this for me. I mean, he's a fantastic egoist. I mean, Max Stirner would be so proud, perhaps, of Thrawn in some ways, aside from, all the military bullshit, but that's another story. So, but yeah, just a tremendous book. So much fun. There's so many characters, like so many guest appearances that are made. You definitely want more. And it's a tremendous origin story for the character. I mean, and there's more that could be said in the past, and you get glimpses of that. But it is so cool how it was done. The other nice thing, I mentioned that Governor Price is in it. Of course, she's not governor yet, but this is kind of like her ascendancy. And that's one of the things. The fact that she's in it kind of adds to her bringing in Thrawn, because like now she's kind of part of this story, right? But the cool thing is that you got the hint. Something that I had said. I was like, I think that that Governor Price is based off of, was it Cate Blanchett when she was in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that terrible Indiana Jones movie that we don't want to talk about. But she was hot in that, right? Like the Russian, woman, it worked. And I was like, yeah, I think they're basing Governor Price on that. And I bet when Governor Price was younger, like she was a minx, And well, let's just say you kind of get glimpses of such a thing. And so that was nice to like kind of have that theory sort of, proven. And so I love this book. It's so good. And it's also making up for, not that I had a problem. So, we're doing a Star Wars update here. I'll talk a little bit quick about the ending of, so spoiler alerts, the ending of season 3 of Rebels. I thought that the last, what was it, 0 Hour? The last 2 episodes of Rebels were pretty good. But I don't know. Like, I mean, they were good. They were very good. Definitely some of the best episodes of Rebels ever done. No doubt about that. I was really hoping for a bit more. I'm glad Thrawn didn't die, because I was about ready to give up on Star Wars, and I said as much on social media that I'd give up on Star Wars if they killed off Thrawn, at the end of season 3, because they just hadn't done enough. And you got that glimpse of Thrawn now, or you got the glimpse of the real Thrawn in that 2-parter. So it was worth it for that. But yeah, just season 4's, and we're getting a season 4. Season 4 has to really go a lot further, has to do a lot more, has to push a lot harder, and has to have a lot more badassery going on. So I was largely pleased with 0 Hour. I thought it was good, and there was a lot of cool things. The interdictor cruisers, a lot of great stuff put in. So I really liked it. I still have some minor issues with the Obi-Wan episode from this season, but they're minor. Just personal things that I wanted to see, nothing more. I totally understand a lot of the choices and everything for that. But, the other thing too, and this is a good thing for me, but for a lot of other people, like it's really bad that I think to totally understand an episode of Rebels, you still have to watch Rebels Recon. Like, you've got to watch that right away. As soon as you watch Star Wars Rebels, you've got to watch Rebels Recon to really understand what happens in each episode. Because for whatever reason, they don't have enough narrative time. I don't want to say it's a lack of prowess, but they don't have enough narrative time to squeeze in all the details, and so they have to tell you about it in the usual 10-minute episode of Rebels Recon on the Star Wars YouTube channel. So I'm a little disappointed that it still requires that extra bit of watching. And in fact, it's interesting. So, please, I don't want to get any kind of no true Scotsman thing. I mean, whatever your passion is for Star Wars, you go for it. You have a good time with it. I don't care. I'm not here to judge you or anything. But I find it interesting that the average episode of Rebels Recon usually gets a little over 100,000, maybe views. And what's kind of shocking for me is, like, to my mind, that kind of says to me, and this is just me, I'm not judging you, that kind of says, like, so there's only 100,000 real Star Wars fans out there? Not real, you know what I mean, but like super serious Star Wars fans that really want to get nitty gritty. Because like I said, you really cannot understand these episodes completely without watching Star Wars Rebels or without watching Rebels Recon, in my opinion. And so, like, I'm kind of shocked by that. Like, that those numbers are so low, Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what to make of that. But whatever. Anyway, so I Rebels Season 3, obviously it's the best season of the bunch. Ironically, the two episodes that stand out the most for me, though, not out of just Season 3, but out of Rebels entirely, the two that stick out are of course, like, the battle, Ahsoka versus Vader at the end of Season 2. Like, that's so fucking memorable. That was so badass. And really, the Season 3 finale, I don't think it lived up to the Season 2 finale at all. But whatever, it's still good. Still good. The other one that really sticks out for me, that Lando episode. Was that Season 1? Or maybe it was Season 2. That was so goddamn good. That still sticks out in my mind as like the best episode of the series, in my opinion, which I'm not even that big of a Lando fan. I mean, I like him, but it's amazing how often when Lando shows up in things, like, it was also true, the Lando comic book series has been the best comic book series yet, which the comics are doing all right. Then, like, when Lando appears in Aftermath, in the last Aftermath book, in Empire's End, he stole the show. Like, they got to hold on to this character, because when he shows up, stuff starts happening. Like, it's really cool. So anyway, last bit here. Okay, last couple minutes for the Star Wars update. I did get my hands on this book. Came out April 4th. I had it pre-ordered, and it was the Star Wars: The Visual Encyclopedia. And this is a beautiful, beautiful book. This is brand new. This is one of those large DK books, which they've been doing pretty much everything with Star Wars for a while. And it was Adam Bray is kind of the main. There's other people involved, Trisha Barr and Cole Horton. But Adam Bray's done some of the previous, kind of reference guides for DK for Star Wars. And this one is no shortage of just being absolutely beautiful. Especially, here's the funny thing. If you're really into the clothing of Star Wars, and understand that before I even, had this book, like, it had been well known that a lot of money went into, like, especially like with Episode 1 and other movies, a lot of money went into wardrobe. Like, making these, just stunning dress designs and all this other stuff, right? You get to really get a deep dive into all that clothing that costs so much goddamn money for George Lucas. So the book's almost worth it for that alone. But there's other stuff. There's covering aliens, starships, luggage even. I mean, just like, this is, if you want to really understand like the nuance and the kind of the more common man life of Star Wars, this is the book to get. It's just a great reference guide. So it's Star Wars: The Visual Encyclopedia. I mean, and it's fairly large. I mean, it has quite a few. These are gigantic books. It weighs in at about 200 pages, which is pretty good considering that, like, the visual guides that are very popular for whatever movie comes out, like the Rogue One visual guide and all that, usually those don't even touch 100 pages. This is doing 200 pages easy. And just lots of fascinating information, lots of little tidbits, to walk away with that, well, maybe little trivia points that will end up becoming very important, in storylines later on. And I'm going to end the Star Wars update for this week on that, and that is especially with the Thrawn book. Like, it's amazing how much better Rebels is. Not that it was bad, but it's amazing how much better the Rebels cartoon is in my mind, after reading the Thrawn book. I think Disney is playing a very, very long game with Star Wars. And the long game is going to pay off, where they know how much they're teasing and how much sometimes things don't seem to make sense or are getting released out of order or whatever. But when it's all going to be said and done and available, maybe by the year 2021 or something, when all the Star Wars is out there, like, you're just going to experience this magnum opus of connectivity, of lore that is just, that maybe next to Babylon 5 will be completely unmatched. Like I said this, in fact, I was on School Sucks and we were talking about, it's available as a Patreon episode for me as well. But we were talking about Star Wars. We did a review kind of Rogue One. And my point in that was that I recognized that while Rogue One's not my favorite movie, it could have been, but they changed it up significantly. While Rogue One isn't my favorite movie, I can see where in the future, this movie, it could become the most important movie, because there's a lot of things that they're talking about, like Jeddah and a lot of this other stuff, that will suddenly make sense once more movies come out, or more books come out, or more this and that, or whatever ends up coming out. And that's kind of my prediction, is that there's a real long game being played here, and in the future, Star Wars is like a lot of this connecting tissue is going to start making sense. So if everything isn't like really great for you right now, like you read a book and you're like, yeah, that was good, but it wasn't great. Like, I think in the future, a lot of it's going to be like, oh no, wow, that was way better. And people might end up rereading the books or the comics or, whatever. And Rebels, I think, is going to end up becoming like a much better show, because, even Dave Filoni, he keeps hinting at that too. He's like, I know you think that there are episodes that aren't important, but you'll find out eventually that they are important. And I think that's the reality of so much of what's happening in Star Wars right now. Right now, Disney can bank on the fact that it's Star Wars, and so it's instantaneously going to make money, ratings, and sales. Okay? But in the future, after so much comes out, you're going to have to start making stuff that's like really, really great, and you can't rely on everybody going to see something just because it's Star Wars. Not to say that what they're putting out isn't largely great, in my opinion, anyway. But when that time comes, they have to have an incredible foundation that all this stuff can get built upon, and they're building that right now. And that's why some things may not make sense. Some things may seem weaker than others. That's just my opinion on it. So anyway, exciting stuff. Star Wars, rock and roll, baby. Woo! I'm loving it. I'm loving it. That Thrawn book, I can't recommend a book more. Hell, I think it's already book of the year. Like, I can't picture a book, regardless of what franchise, universe, whatever it exists in. I can't picture a book topping that one this year. So good. Timothy Zahn apparently is going to be writing more. I can't wait. Do it. I love Timothy Zahn. Most people like his Cobra books, the Conquerors trilogy. The Conquerors trilogy is one of my favorite sci-fi trilogies of all time. I really wish they'd make a movie out of it. People thought it was boring, but that's because it was a lot of what's the word I don't want to say mercantilism. That has kind of negative connotations, but it had to do a lot with like trade, and I mean, it was a very, very different science fiction trilogy, especially for its time in the 90s. I love the Conquerors trilogy. So anyway, Timothy Zahn still rocking it, still doing a great job. Good for him. Rock and roll. So all right, that's enough. Woo! We'll have more episodes coming out this week, and of course, the season finale for Sex and Science Hour will be out this Friday, and then got a dynamite Sovereign Tech lined up for you. Can't wait to perform that episode. So I'll see you on the other side. And thank you so much, of course, as always, for being a patron and making this all go round and round. Woo!
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.